Dude, that is insane power, man. That straight line just kept pulling.
Yep.
The coolest thing about this Rexy is not the matte paint job or the matte wrap. It's actually the engine that's been put into it. We've all heard about the Subaru EJ problems, the blown up EJ motors. This one has been through a few and it's got a very special trait. I've got Josh here with me today to tell us about what he's done and why he's done it, why he's moved away from the EJ motor. This is going to be a good one, guys. Welcome back to another episode of MDTV, guys. Today I've got Josh with me. How you doing, mate?
Good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm very good. Thanks for coming on the channel, man.
That's okay, thank you.
I think we've been waiting like a whole year.
It has been, yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Since you first reached out about doing this video, so
yes.
It's finally time to do it.
Let's start with what happened first. Like what happened to your stock motor and how it led to this and why you chose this motor.
I've owned this car for 7 years. When I purchased the car, it already had a rebuilt motor, all different sort of modifications. 6 months later, that motor failed me. The ring lands failed, gouged the bore, block was pretty much gone. I took it to a shop, they diagnosed that issue. We went down the route of rebuilding another motor. That motor was rated to 400 kilowatts. The car ended up making 335 kilowatts and it was in that configuration for maybe 2 years. Full closed deck, forged pistons, rods,
Wow.
aftermarket turbo, everything. At the time, that was just running off the stock ECU. Throughout those 2 years that car was running at that power level, it was pretty much nothing but trouble. I had the gearbox fail. I broke teeth off fourth gear.
Wow.
The clutch
and is this
failed
off the STI gearbox as well?
It was a Liberty GT
yeah, right. Okay.
box. Strong enough to hold that kind of power, but unfortunately just didn't. So I rebuilt the box, the clutch failed, we put a twin plate clutch in it, the surge tank pump failed, replaced that, the in-tank pump failed, replaced that. So the O2 sensor in a Subaru is located before the up pipe, before the turbo. Well, you've got one before, one after. I was unlucky enough that the one before the turbo, the tip actually snapped off
And
the
it fell into
sensor
the turbo.
and lodged itself in the back of the turbo fins. Was very lucky that it did no damage to the turbo at all. Then we had head gasket failure.
Oh my God,
Right? The head gaskets were replaced.
Yeah. And is this still on that one built motor?
This is still on that one built motor. After we had head gasket failure, I took it to a shop. They kind of looked at it and they went, this motor's toast.
No way.
And I was like, what do you mean? Like, it's done barely 30,000 Ks. Yeah. It's barely 2 years old. I paid so much money to have this thing built.
And was this the same shop that built the motor as well?
It wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't. By that point, I had had some issues with one shop. I moved on to another.
Yeah.
Not gonna name names.
Yep.
They're all fine. Yeah, they kind of looked at me and said, this motor's toast. And I was like, what do you mean? It drove here. Like, it had a head gasket failure, but it drove. I was like, you know what? I don't care. Slap it back together. If it blows up 1,000 kilometers later, that motor blew up in spectacular fashion. Not to say that they aren't, good motors. They can be built right. I think for the amount of money that, your generic person is putting into it to, get something like 350 kilowatts, it's not worth it.
So how did it blow up?
I had a couple other issues on the car. I fixed those and I went for a test drive. Drove the car on low boost, everything was happy. Said, cool, no worries, let's go home. Turned around, said, no, I'll do a full boost pull. Knocked it up to full boost, put my foot down, first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear. Awesome. And then I looked back and it was just plumes of smoke.
Oh, God.
I was like, oh.
Did it sound any different?
No.
Oh.
No, the car was flawless through
Yeah.
that pull. It was like its last hurrah. It got sent back to a shop and got diagnosed, cracked bore.
Oh, shit.
So enough cylinder pressure to break through the cylinder wall.
Even though it was closed deck, it broke through the cylinder wall. That's crazy.
Pressurized coolant system and just sent all the coolant everywhere. Towed the car home and the car sat there for 6 months whilst I did research and decided what I wanted to do with it. Yeah. But whilst I was sitting there contemplating, what motor do I want to go with, what's going to fit, two things happened. My parents had their Ford Territory, which was very neglected across its life. That kept going to work and back. Minimal servicing, minimal parts, kept going. How can I put so much money into this and it fails and that gets nothing?
Yeah.
But that keeps going. I was like, that's weird.
The oil was probably like as thick as the yogurt, hey?
Yeah. The other thing that happened was my work ute needed to go in for some repairs. So my mate let me borrow his XR6 turbo.
So this is a Ford Falcon, right?
Yep. Yeah,
okay.
Ford Falcon, 6-cylinder turbo, 4 litre. As much as it was auto, it was still a lot of fun. I pretty much parked that car next to this one at home, opened both bonnets, grabbed a tape measure, started measuring up. And yeah, a couple months of research, chatting to a fabricator, I started buying parts.
Nice.
I was like, I'm gonna do it. We're doing this, we're committing. There certainly were the challenges. To begin with, it was just all research. Parts, what's gonna fit, how wide is an intake manifold, an exhaust manifold, you know, what sort of spacing am I going to have for an exhaust? What gearbox, is the gearbox going to fit? There was just so many things to go through. It wasn't just like I woke up one day and purchased the motor. I was like, yeah, I'm going to make it work. It was a lot of research. Ended up going with a Haltech, but how do we make the Haltech work with this system? You know, it can't be plug and play anymore because we're using an entirely different engine, this, that. The car went back to the fabrication shop, PSI Fab. Guy named Justin, he's out in Windsor. Phenomenal work, loved him. It was one of the best experiences I had at an automotive shop. The idea was I'll just get him to do like the mounts, get everything in there, and then maybe I'll do the rest. Once I saw his quality of work, I was like, I want that. Justin manufactured engine mounts, the gearbox mounts, he modified the intake manifold, he did the exhaust, intercooler piping, radiator piping, catch cans, everything. By all means, I'm no fabricator. So once the car had finished at fabrication, it came home to me. I then pretty much sourced all the parts myself, fuel system, electrical system, everything in between, installed, wired, everything. Front to back, pretty much everything's changed. I think the only stock Subaru part left in is the R180 diff, which everyone was like, that's not going to hold, and so far, fingers crossed, it is holding.
For people like me who don't know, and for the viewers that don't know, can you tell me what engine this is and where it came out of?
Here in Australia, we had locally mass-produced Ford Falcons. Early 2000s up until 2013. Every SUV, sedan, ute, all the way from taxis to their high-end performance vehicles, had a version of this motor. They had ones that ran on petrol, gas, bit of both. Throughout the years, these have become more popular for swaps. A lot of people do them in Nissan Patrols, but they're starting to pop up in every single car imaginable, like this.
It's got a 4-litre displacement.
That's correct.
For a 6-cylinder, which seems pretty large. Why else do people choose this? Is it like a closed deck motor? Is it super strong? Or?
They are strong. They handle abuse. So as I mentioned, we've had a couple in the family, and they just hold up to anything. You know, you just hold the smell of an oily rag above it, and it's like, yeah, I'm good for 1,000 Ks. They're just really strong. They're very torquey. You can make great power out of them just out of their factory configuration. You know, you can imagine then people start putting forged motors and billet cranks and all sorts of silly stuff, and you know, you'll start making ridiculous power.
Yeah.
You know, it's
and a lot more easily than the EJ platform, hey?
Oh yeah.
Let's continue with what you said before. After the car came back to you with the engine in place, what did you have to do next?
Yeah.
And what was your biggest problem?
Once this car got home to me, I pulled everything out. I needed to do some small upgrades to the motor. I just wanted to do, you know, new gaskets, new seals. There are a few little things that the Barra needs to make some good power. Valve springs, oil pump gears. Whilst I was there, I did timing chain, head studs, just had the head resurfaced and freshened up. All of the AN lines, pretty much everywhere throughout the car, made by myself, measured by myself. So I essentially just bought the basic tools, bought some bits and pieces, learned how to do it. It's relatively easy. Made everything from the boost lines to the coolant lines, oil lines, water lines, they're all AN. Biggest challenge for myself was the wiring. As much as I'm, you know, kind of familiar with electronics, wiring up a car was something I just had no clue. Conveniently enough, I purchased a Haltech 2500, which came with a terminated loom for this car. Haltech know that people are putting these motors in everything and anything, so they've got their terminated harness just to make that a little bit easier. But there were still modifications to the loom that I needed to make to suit my application. Integrating the Haltech with the existing wiring of the car.
So that's just like all the electronics inside and all the pumps, right?
Yep, so making sure that a mobilizer works, speed sensors.
Right.
So on these cars, the speed comes from the ABS. So that all comes on the CAN bus system. So I had to learn all about CAN bus.
That's
crazy. So many nights just sitting there on my laptop, reading, looking through 3,000 page documents on this
crazy,
car.
dude.
It was a lot, but it was very rewarding when I do something, you get it done. Everything started to get reassembled for that last time. Had a few complications of tail shaft not fitting into the back of the gearbox, so that had to be sent off to a machinist. Eventually, that all led to putting fluids in the car and cranking it for the first time, which you'll find on that highlight story. And I was very excited when we turned on the injectors and the car started up first go. 2 years of thinking about this car and working on it, late nights out in the cold. That was extremely rewarding. Got the car off to tuning.
So who do you take it to for tuning? Because it's so unique, man. You don't take it to a Subaru specialist?
Well,
you take it to a Ford specialist?
Justin, my fabricator, purchased a dyno.
Oh, nice.
I said, please, I would love for you. You've built the car, you know the car in and out. For you to tune it, it's just going to be so easy. Still runs 98. It's got a flex fuel sensor. The idea was I want to make just more than what the EJ did. One of the things that we haven't touched on yet is this car is no longer all-wheel drive. This is rear-wheel drive now. So I am running the gearbox out of a Ford Falcon, the TR6060, custom tail shaft, and then the factory STI rear end. So that's a 6-speed manual. We'll show you once we get in the car. Everything looks factory. So with the car being in a rear-wheel drive configuration, I needed to learn it first. I didn't want to, tune it 600 kilowatts,
It would be
go
so
out on
loose,
the first
man.
street, first corner, sideways, wall, done.
Yeah, bro.
Like, it was, let's just ease into this. We ended up making 385 kilowatts, 500 horsepower on 16 PSI.
My gosh, that was your first ever tune.
Yeah, on this car. Yep.
Oh gosh.
And it was just like, let's just ease into it. And then obviously we've got E85 available on top of that. So the idea is probably next year, go in for a checkup tune, get a few extra things added in and do E85. Enjoyed the car for a little bit to the point where I finally booked in my first roller racing test and tune. So we went out, the car drove great all night.
I remember seeing that, man.
Yep, the biggest issue was traction.
But after that run, the motor was fine and everything. You didn't run into any other problems other than traction.
Driving home after the roller racing event, I could hear a noise. And I was like, oh, it sounds like something's rattling a little loose. That's fine, it's to be expected. Everything's just gotten super hot and then starting to cool down again. Got the car up on jack stands at home, identified that the noise was coming from the motor. So unfortunately that was motor out. What I found was a couple of the bottom end bearings had just started to wear through. This motor came out of a wrecking shop. Don't know the exact history of it. Apparently it had 115,000 Ks, but I don't know how it was treated within that 115,000 Ks. I decided that I was going to rebuild it at home. Borrowed some specialty tools off a friend. Once again, jumped online, did all the research under the sun and started purchasing more parts. So we did bottom end bearings, we did main studs, a harmonic balancer, and rebuilt it.
Man, good on you for giving that a go, man. That sounds so scary.
It was very daunting, especially turning the key for the first time, knowing that I'd been in there and messed around, and I didn't want anyone else to do it. I wanted to do it myself. And so far, so good. The car's done maybe 1,000 or so Ks since the rebuild. Haven't had a single issue. All temps are fine, runs great, sounds great, feels great. Yeah, can't fault it so far. I do feel pain for Justin, my fabricator. There was some modifications to the firewall, the gearbox tunnel. No doubt he'll remember moving the heater core, the factory heater core coming out of the dash, or the firewall, sat exactly where the motor needed to sit.
Oh, right,
so he ended up having to move them, which meant that he had to pull the entire dash out.
Oh, shit.
And look, thank you so much to him. He did a fantastic job. There's no dash rattles, which I was worried about.
What about everything from the gearbox back? You said you had to fabricate the drive shaft.
Yeah.
What did you do with the front two diffs? Did you have to throw them in the bin?
The gearbox setup that I had at the time, gearbox, clutch, drive shafts, rear diff, I sold. At the time, they were worth a premium. That box had been rebuilt and I ended up selling it for 7 or 7.5 grand. In saying that, I spent 6 grand having that box rebuilt, so I probably didn't make any money. That's not what it's about.
Well, did you feel like you were losing a lot going from all-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive? Because one of the best things about owning a Subaru is that it's all-wheel drive.
It is. You're completely right. So I've experienced all-wheel drive, I've enjoyed it, but throughout that time, there was an itch of, I want a rear-wheel drive car. I want to lose traction. I want to do a burnout when I want to.
You're right.
Let's go. And yeah, luckily so far, the little R180 diff and STI shafts are holding up.
Because they're supposedly pretty strong.
They're pretty strong in a Subaru configuration, but you got to remember that you're splitting that power between the front and the rear wheels. Whereas now it's all getting to the rear.
Can you tell us about what turbo it comes with? Did you have any problems fitting that in? And then everything after the turbo, the headers or the dump pipe and all that stuff.
So throughout the design process of this car, I spoke to a Queensland company called Steadfast. They manufactured the exhaust manifold. I told them my limitations of space, and they ever so slightly modified their existing manifold design to suit this application. Basically just bringing the turbo down and in just a little bit. Sitting on top of that is a Pulsar GTX 3584. For reference, it's probably one size up from the Ford Performance Turbo that the top of the line XR6 turbos came with. Sitting below that is a Turbo Smart 50mm wastegate. In terms of exhaust, the whole system is V-band. We come out of the turbo at, I think it's 3-inch, and then down into 3.5. The external wastegate's plumbed in. In terms of the cold side, it's a ProFlow intake manifold and fuel rail.
So did you have to remove all the fuel lines from the Rexy or like the Subaru fuel lines?
Yeah. Still utilising the existing fuel lines coming from the tank, coming up through the firewall, and then we're just running through fuel filters, fuel pressure regulators, and ethanol sensor. 1000cc Bosch injectors. Intake coming on the turbo. The idea was to design it like a process waste intake that goes down into the guard, but obviously bigger. So Justin fabbed up.
That looks massive, man.
It does,
it does. At least 4 inches, hey?
Yeah, and then it's got a 4-inch pod filter hidden behind the front bar.
Engine aside now, what else have you done to it? It's on coilovers?
So a lot of the modifications have been existing from when I bought the car. AME traces were originally silver. I painted them black to suit the theme. The car's been wrapped in Avery satin black.
Oh, and what about underneath the engine? Did you have to change the subframe and the sway bars and all that stuff?
A very good question. Stock subframe was modified to suit this motor. So basically a U-shape put in the middle of it to suit the motor getting nice and low. The steering rack was dropped a little bit. The sway bar was kind of just mounted on a slightly different angle, but it was basically same mounting points, just rotated a little bit. MCA blue coilovers. We've got lots of white line bits and pieces. One of the things that I did have to choose through the design process was the sump configuration. So obviously your EJ motor sump sits forward of the subframe. Falcons, because they came in so many different vehicles, they came in many different configurations. That two-piece sump allowed us to clear the subframe, but then we modified that original second half. It maybe sat that low, and we were able to shorten it, but widen it. Not that I've finalised it because I've been a bit lazy, but this will have air conditioning as well.
Yep. So we'll have to be driving with the windows down later.
Yeah. So we're just coming into summer now, and it's something I need to sort out ASAP. Yeah, it's just about it for the engine bay. I'm sure there's thousands of things that people are thinking of asking that I've just glossed over. Pulling this motor in and out, it's actually so easy.
Yeah, really?
Once you've got everything else out of the bay and you drop the gearbox, you keep that under the car. Bonnet generally comes off just for ease of getting in and out. But the trick is you kind of move the motor forward a little bit, throw it on a diagonal and just lift straight up.
With this gearbox though, did you have to build it or is this still just a stock gearbox from the Ford?
No, it is the stock TR6060 gearbox.
Oh gosh,
yep.
Okay.
We did modify it slightly to have the shifter in the right place.
Well, so it sounds like a win in all directions, going from EJ to this.
Yep.
I'm keen to see what this feels like, what it sounds like on the road. So with that being said, maybe I'll take some B-rolls and then we'll go for a drive. So rumbly, dude. Oh man.
Still very strong, very clunky
dude, the
feel.
sound, man. Dude, that 6-cylinder growl, the purr is so nice. It's not that, it's a little bit raspy, but it sounds like really full.
Yeah. And look, one of the things that really impresses me about this car is the drivability.
Yeah.
So just being able to jump in, You could drive down to the shops. But, it's not perfect. It's still a modified car. It still feels a little bit clunky. It makes the odd noise here and there. But overall,
not too bad.
I'm thrilled.
This would lose traction at about 50-60% throttle, hey? In first gear?
It's pretty good. As I said, on the street, generally I'm just driving around on low boost, which is like 10 PSI.
Oh shit! That was such a long pull, man. Wow.
They're very long gears.
It sounded like it had more.
Yeah.
And like normally the exhaust, it would cut off at like a certain pitch, but this just kept going.
No, it just keeps going.
Oh wow.
That was on low boost.
Low boost, I can't believe it, bro. And the traction, like so far the traction feels pretty good.
Yeah. So when I went roll racing, low boost traction, completely fine.
Yeah, so it was a high boost where you were starting to lose.
Yeah, it was high boost, second gear.
Yeah.
That was rough.
And can you tell us about this little control module down here?
Yes, 8-button Haltech CAN button. Currently the only ones I really use, I can trigger my fans on and off manually, and boost control. I haven't really put anything else in there yet. Eventually I'll aim to have traction control, probably cruise control on there as well.
Oh yeah, nice. Because you can program all of that in.
Yeah, and another thing I'll aim to get is boost by gear. So the car identifies what gear you're in, and then
it'll adjust the boost
accordingly.
Damn,
So
that's so cool.
Less wheel spin in second, you build up the speed, then you'll be fine in third, sort of thing. So.
Oh, damn, that's so cool. So each gear you're in, it will unlock a different amount of boost.
Pretty much, yeah.
Oh, that's hectic.
Yeah. I did do the initial Haltech setup at home. Once again, fairly easy. They've got base maps for this motor. So it's basically upload their base tune, and that's what I started the car on.
Right, that's so interesting. That you could put in a base tune for this motor from another car, and then
Yeah, and so it's enough to get it started, make sure you got no leak, check through that all your sensors are working, little things like that, and then obviously you want to get a tune past that point.
This is going to be pretty interesting, because for all the Subaru fans that don't know your car, when they hear you come past, they're going to be like, this sounds so interesting. I wonder what headers and what exhaust it's got.
People are always
like that
wondering.
guy there, that guy's probably wondering that as well, and then you open the hood, it's like a whole different platform there.
Yeah, people are always, questioning what exhaust you've got or this and that, but yeah, no one's going to match this for sure.
Yeah. Oh shit! Dude, that is insane power, man. That
It's
straight
not
line
bad,
just kept pulling.
Yep.
So you've never had issues with like fuel cuts or whatever? It's just...
No. It's I run a radium surge hanger.
Yeah.
So that goes basically replaces the original hanger in the fuel tank, a Walbro 450, I think it is.
Yeah,
something
right.
around that, which is plenty of fuel delivery for this car. So
Yeah.
certainly not a cheap exercise. I can't go around recommending this to people because
It's expensive, eh?
you've got to commit a lot of time, research, and money to it.
With the gearbox though, why did you choose to go with the Falcon gearbox and not try to make it like all-wheel drive?
There's just no room.
No
so
room. Right,
the gearbox bell housing on this sits around 200 mil further back than the normal 6-speed in a Subaru would, and obviously there's not 200 mil worth of space up the front for this motor to sit. So
That just kept pulling, man.
Yeah.
Oh my god. And you don't have any issues with like overheating in this engine or whatever?
Nope. It's all been pretty good. So, only myself overheating, only because I haven't put aircon in yet, but that's all right.
Dude, this is so exciting. I can't get over it, man. It's quite shocking when you punch it, but it's even more shocking that it doesn't stop.
Yeah, no, it just keeps going. Relatively smooth to drive. You get the odd bumps here and there, but as mentioned, that's all to do with coilovers and suspension setup. Nothing to do with this motor swap. So.
Yeah, nope. I like that the exhaust at low speeds is not overwhelming.
No,
it's not obnoxious.
No, it's the best of both worlds. While you're cruising around, keep the RPMs low. The car's going to be nice and quiet. When you get into it, you're going to hear it for sure.
Yeah.
And one of the big things to notice between this and say the EJ, this thing just has so much more torque.
Dude, this sounds so good. Amazing.
So there you go. It's like, it's right on tap. It's right
Yeah.
there. There's no lag. You put your foot down
Yeah.
and it goes.
Yeah. And all of that exhaust work is fabricated. So if someone else wanted to do it, they can't get this off the shelf, hey?
No. There's so much custom stuff in this car.
Yeah, it truly is a
Even
one-on-one.
if someone were to try and replicate this car, you can't. I've had people message me being like, hey, you know, get your fabricator to make up some engine mounts and send them across to me. He's like, he doesn't, it's not like
doesn't work.
It's not an off-the-shelf part. He didn't make it and measure it. It's like one and done. The people who have been interested in doing something like this, biggest thing is doing their research.
Like
I had nothing to go off. Just
Yeah.
because I've done it doesn't mean I've done it right.
Yeah,
I want to see what other people do.
Well, thanks so much for your time, man.
No, that's okay. Thanks for being patient.
Nah,
and,
dude.
you know,
I'm
teeing
sure
this up.
I'm sure this is such a long, a long wait for most of the people waiting, and a lot of the people that follow your Instagram. Thanks guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, like the video, follow Josh on his Instagram as well. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode.